G'day guys and welcome, my name is Michael and I'm the DeadAussieGamer and welcome back to Dead Aussie Review, where I review a number of tabletop role-playing games that I've had the absolute pleasure of playing and running as my time as a game master and role player. Now, today we're going to be continuing our look at Through the Breach in the expansion Into the Bayou. Now, Into the Bayou covers, of course, as the name implies, the creatures, critters, and things that exist in the swampy bayous of Malifaux. Chief of all, the creatures known as the Gremlins, these green and lovable little creatures here that exist and reside within the swamps. Now, as always, guys, this is not going to be a total breakdown of each of these books. Again, if I get enough requests, I might do a full breakdown, but for the time being, we're just going to be looking at the overall, what is in this book, and what do we think about it in comparison to the overarching game? What does it contribute? Is it good? Is it worth picking up? So yeah, let's talk about that. So let's start by saying what is in this book. Well, like with all the expansion books, we're going to be looking at making a new tarot where you actually get to create a gremlin character. These gremlin characters use the waterway tarot in order to determine their usual stats and abilities, as well as which family of gremlin to which they belong. Now, Gremlin Culture is very interesting, and I've actually kind of started reading more and more about it since picking up this book. I love the nature of gremlins being quite enigmatic. You know, no one really knows where they've come from or what they really want. But for the most part, the more I've delved into it, the more it's actually a rather robust narrative around making gremlin characters. You have how much they value clothing and how it's a sign of status because they like to mimic things. They like to mimic people and learn skills based off observation. I think that's a great skill, and it really is reflected here in a number of different aspects, both narratively and mechanically. You can see, gremlins who have copied people who have basically just gone out and gotten drunk, they've adopted some of these kind of things, including recipes for moonshine. You could see how they've managed to copy individuals who are quite skilled in different areas, using guns, firearms, and other complex weaponries. So it's a very interesting type of character that is now available to be played. Much like with From Nightmares, the Gremlins represent the ability to play characters who are not human, which immediately adds variety to the game. And the first thing I always say is like when you're playing non-human characters, you've got to say, what makes this so different? Why is this entirely different? And one of the first things is that they're smaller. They're definitely received in the world in a very different way to the Neverborn and the Undead. They're actually hunted for the most part for sport. Many people seeing gremlins as little more than pests. If you're Australian like myself, you would kind of relate them a little bit to cane toads, you know. There's no real penalty for killing a gremlin, but, you know, you just definitely want to make sure that you're not ending up with a swarm of them or you're in for a bad time. So gremlins and human relations are not exactly the most of ideal, but nonetheless, it is still a very interesting and very versatile element that's being added to the game here. In the book as well, you've got a bunch of new pursuits that you can kind of look at taking part of. And the good thing about these is because, in my mind, gremlins are very much characters who copy people and who copy humans in order to, you know, determine who they are as an identity. It means that a lot of the actual pursuits that you'll find in this book are actually stuff that you will 100% be able to utilize no matter what you're playing. So even if you're playing a human character or an undead character, all the pursuits here actually make for good options no matter where you come from. So let's read through a couple of them real quick, just to kind of, you know, again, just go over them. So you have the Bokor, who is the shamanistic kind of character. Again, you can easily see shamans being used. Boomers, who use shotguns. Boozers, who are a bunch of drunks. The Buckaroo, who is kind of like a rough rider. The Copycat. Well, quite explained, you know, copy people. The Pugilist. Now, the Pugilist is probably the one that I've used the most in a variety of games. Just being able to actually box it being in this book was like, yeah, okay, cool, I guess, you know, just get into the old fisticuffs here. The swineherd, which really flavor-wise, you can actually change into more or less anything. You know, like you don't necessarily have to herd pigs. You could switch it around and replace it with puppies or, you know, whatever you would like. But yeah, that one's also a really good one. And the trapper, which is someone who you know, traps and sets up survival-y kind of things. So, you know, like you can see there, it's a bunch of stuff that is incredibly useful for people who aren't gremlins, which I think is going to be very important. So yeah, there's that. Advanced pursuits are things like the virtuoso, who's a musician, the big hat, who is, I feel like the big hat is kind of like very ingrained with gremlin culture. It's about like kind of, you know, being, I guess, the biggest boss, as it were, in gremlin society. So, you know, that's kind of it. The lightning bug, which is unstable magic, which is always fun if you're into the wild magic sort of thing. The rocketeer, which is, you know, again, using rockets. And the taxidermist, which I really could see a few undeads taking taxidermy as their whole thing. So yeah, like you can see there, lots of versatility, lots of really, really cool stuff. Now, in addition to that, of course, there are the usual culprits. You have talents, you have spells, you have all these other things. You also have different elements of flora added into it in the form of mushrooms. So there are now little mushroom details of things you would find in the swamps. So that's kind of cool. And lastly, a huge array of swamp-like beings, creatures, and animals. Crocodiles, giant chickens, you know, were-pigs, the gup and the slurid, who are, of course, a unique species to Malifaux. You know, lots of cool stuff. And of course, you know, the Aussie in me is super happy and excited to see that there is actually a bunyip in there as well. So some cool stuff. Cool stuff. Now, where does this fit in the grand scheme of the review? What are we looking at? Well, let's start by bringing up the old review chart here and starting with our first category, and that is simplicity. Is this book easy to read, easy to pick up, and easy to understand? My answer is yes. Literally the only thing that I could say even comes close to complex with this particular book is the families. There is so much narrative in regards to each of the different families and what makes them unique among gremlins that that'd probably be the only thing. But for me, that's not complexity, that's just depth. So this one gets the solid +5 for the simplicity out of 5. I'm very, very happy with it. I found that it's so easy to digest that most of my characters and most of my NPCs that I build utilize this book in some way, shape, or form. Very, very easy to use, very simple, and yeah, awesome. Next up, we have versatility. How versatile is this book? It's going to get a solid 3.5 for this. Why? Well, the 3.5 almost entirely comes from the fact that all of the basic pursuits, all the advanced pursuits, are stuff that can be used with a number of different characters and games. It loses out on the character creation because I did try a couple of times to make a non-gremlin waterway character, and it's nearly impossible. With the family element to it, even if you wanted to use the Bayou destiny steps in order to shape your character and do all that sort of stuff, it becomes quite difficult. The flavor of a lot of what is in here as well tends to lean on what I like to call gremlinisms. So like, you know, throw in the kitchen sink and moonshine and all of these kind of elements to it. Which is great if you want to play kind of that swampy Cajun or redneck type of character. But culturally, you know, I think that it's a very, very heavily reliant on that. So 3.5 for that isn't too bad. Again, a lot of the versatility I feel comes from the pursuits and the ability for you to be able to use them in almost every book. So yeah, solid 3.5 out of 5. Not bad, not bad. Narrative. Narrative gets a solid 4. I love the narrative that came through here. There was just so much information, so many things that kind of played onto where Gremlins came from, some of the notable areas within the Bayou. That was really cool. And it started to really delve into like the Gremlin society, which before this book it never existed. So things like how they're educated, what their lifespan is like, how they run their justice system. All of these elements were just really, really strong. Yeah, no, I absolutely adored it. The only thing I would have really loved to have known is with Gremlins being so separate from humankind, I really, really wanted to know a little bit more about how to incorporate humans and Gremlins into the same group. And that, I think, is another thing that both affected the narrative and the versatility. Gremlins as is, I found, then by their simple nature, it'd be very difficult to play a Gremlin character mixed in with a bunch of humans. It seems like there is a lot against them, and yeah, there's very little wiggle in that way. That being said, it'd be freaking awesome to see a Gremlin fit into, say, the guild, for example. And see what that would look like, or you know, Gremlin Arcanists, for example. Yeah, stuff like that would be kind of cool to see. All right. Next up is, of course, the appearance. How does this book look? It is so pretty. It is very, very, very much filled with a bunch of the very, very favorite artworks from the Gremlins. I think probably my favorite actual art piece is in the talent section. There's like this mechanical boar with a rider on top of it, and in the cap of the rider, there's like a Gatling gun as he's chasing after people. It's very stylistic, very, very easily laid out for people to read, and yeah, like I said, a lot of Gremlinisms are there, really adding a bit of flavor to it as well. So things like, for example, the item section is actually called doodads. So I love that because it kind of gets you in the mood. It gets you feeling. It gets you really kind of feeling like you're in the right book for that kind of character. All right, and that lastly leaves our balance. How is this balanced in the grand scheme of Through the Breach? Incredibly. In fact, so much so that I would say that in addition to Above the Law, which is my favorite of the supplement books, Into the Bayou is equally as valuable. There is just so much in it that even if you're not a Gremlin, you'll be able to make use of. But more importantly, Gremlins are a very, very useful tool for the Fate Master to be able to use as enemies and adversaries. The creatures of Malifaux are also another big threat that people should deal with. Because while Malifaux and Through the Breach encourages you to have human villains, you know, like the Resurrectionists and the Ten Thunders and a few others here and there, ultimately, you can't shake the idea that there is going to be bad guys in the form of just outright monsters. You can't reason with monsters. You can't do anything about them. They're just going to come get you. So this book, Above the Law, are just two different sides of the same coin. One is about like, yeah, cool, we have, you know, the guild as our enemy and people as our enemy. This is kind of the offset of that. We have monsters as our enemies. We have creatures and critters and things that go bump in the night. You know, like the crocodile and the bayou leeches and stuff. Yeah, so that. Plus, I guess the From Nightmares one also kind of fits into that monster category. So balance-wise, this one gets a solid 5 because it is inherently part of the world. It is inherently part of the game. And I don't think anything within these pages does anything to throw that balance out. So that is absolutely awesome. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about the Into the Bayou video or what's inside these pages, leave a comment below. Let me know, because I'll be more than happy to go into details as to any questions you might have or any issues you might have having played it. So till next time, as always, guys, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, bang on that notification bell so that we can tell you when we're releasing more videos, and we will see you next time. Until then, game hard or die trying. Good night, everybody.